Do you take up space? Do you know how to take up space? Or is this something that you've had to work on and really challenge yourself in doing for however many years, months, or days? If so, this episode is for you. We're going to tackle why it's so hard for adults with immigrant parents to take up space sometimes, and something we can do about it to get the ball rolling on taking up some space. I'm Allison Ly. I am your host of Empowered with Immigrant Parents. Welcome back if you've listened before, or thank you for joining us for the first time. Hit subscribe if you hadn't already so that you get all things adults with immigrant parents related sent right to you without having to search for it. All right, taking up space. This is metaphorically, physically, emotionally, mentally, all the things. How do we take up space for ourselves, with other people, in front of other people? How do we take up space when people aren't giving it to us? These are all very, very big questions. And we're just going to get started today on this topic, right? So taking up space, like I said, is just any form of saying what you need to say, do what you need to do, advocate for what you need to, and standing up for yourself or for whoever it is that you're taking up space for. But in this case, for this episode, we'll just say it's for you. Do you take up space? And why is it so hard for adults with immigrant parents to take up space? Well, first of all, two things come to mind. Culturally, the expectation is that, we sometimes have to, and again, this is not true for everyone, so, see what applies to your experience or what you've noticed with your friends and families. But culturally, there is an expectation that, you don't speak up, you don't oppose, you don't disrespect your elders by speaking up and sharing your opinion. So generally, like in the Asian cultures, right, and I know it's not a monolith, but generally speaking, elders are supposed to be respected. You don't talk back, you don't share your opinion if it's not asked, or you do as what people say. So the eldest in the family generally have more quote unquote power, or just regard for what they're saying. So there may be a pattern of just holding back because, one, you're not wanting to be disrespectful to people, and you're not allowed to, or you might cause more problems than you want to deal with for that day, for whatever topic it is. So we get into this habit, you might get into this habit of not sharing your thoughts and feelings. So it might actually impede you on being able to know what your thoughts and your opinions are because no one's asked, right? And you haven't been able to share it with people because they don't allow it, they don't care, they don't respect it, or they generally, culturally, don't expect you to have an opinion, right? So that could be very challenging. And actually, a third thing I thought of is language barrier. So if we can't even share what we're feeling with our immigrant parents or immigrant families, or maybe they do speak the same language, they speak English, we speak Vietnamese, we speak Chinese to them, whichever it is, but we're both not fluent in the same language, that's going to be really hard to know how to take up space, how to share what we need, how to actually advocate for the things that we want, because we don't know how to say it in a way that is understood, or don't know how to say it at all, or the other party just doesn't comprehend what we're saying, or they're misunderstanding what we're saying. So the language barrier also adds a whole nother game, a whole nother ballpark of challenges to being understood and being able to take up space on top of the cultural piece, if that is related. We've already talked about why it could be difficult to take up space because we're not actually asked. Culturally, it may not be acceptable. We just hadn't really been thinking about what we need because it hasn't been something that's been asked of us. It might be hard to communicate that in different languages. Another factor that contributes to having difficulty taking up space is just like what we see in mainstream media for so long. For example, for me, being Asian and the clients that I work with predominantly being Asian of some sort, there wasn't a lot of representation, there wasn't a lot of awareness or knowledge of things that were important to the Asian communities. And of course, there's so many variations of Asians, but generally it's not very seen in the medias. There may not be a lot of representation for who we are, what we look like, the things that we do in mainstream media and books, in music. And I'm a millennial, so growing up, there was few of that for me. And when there were, like, you kind of hung on to that one person who's in a show, and of course they're playing like a stereotypical role and not the main lead or whatever it is as an Asian American. But in 2025 today, there's so much more representation and so much more awareness of different cultures and different holidays, tradition, things like that. But not having that representation in mainstream media, books, also inhibits someone from being able to take up space, right? I think it's hard to be able to share about something, and worry about questions and backlash or like judgment or criticism about things that like we do or whatnot. And of course, that doesn't apply to everyone, but I'm just pointing out a factor that could be playing into people not wanting to take up space and already being conditioned to not really speak up so much generally. Then not having like backup, so to speak, can also add to that easiness of like not saying anything and wanting to blend in and not being picked on or criticized or made fun of, being bullied or whatever it is. So there's reasons why it's very difficult for adults with immigrant parents, people who grow up with immigrant parents, to take up space. Another factor that plays a role in this is, if you are familiar with the Maslow hierarchy of needs, it's basically this pyramid where it talks about the different basic needs that we need to have met in order for us to go up and up on the pyramid. And I'll link that in the show notes and on my website. But if you don't have the foundational levels taken care of, it's really hard to go up the ladder to like self-fulfillment, which is like figuring out who we are and sharing our opinions and like really living out our best lives in the way that we want, because the other needs aren't taken care of. And at the very bottom of that is like safety, right? Basic food, necessities, and just feeling safe. And for a lot of times, for people who have families who are immigrants or an immigrant themselves, safety, comfort, love is questionable. There's been a big change. Someone in the family had left their home and gone to a new place that's speaking different languages, unfamiliar, like not their home that they grew up in. They don't know how to get to their grocery store just from the back of their hands. And language is an issue where all of these factors make it so much harder to feel safe or to have like financial freedom to feel like they could go branch off and like just do something for fun, right? Then maybe they might be more focused on work or school so that they could feel that safety somehow. So not having our basic needs met because there's a recent history of immigration may be a challenge too. And this may still be applicable to people who move over to another country with, money, who are wealthy, because it's still, the factors are the same where, language is an issue. Culturally, there's things we have to assimilate to and really, get used to. And that can bring a lot of feelings of unsafety to take up space. Maybe we don't have all our friends and families in the community that we had back where we were living before, where you were living before, even if, you had a lot of money. So it's just that shock of having to move and acculturate, assimilate, and adjust to a new space. There's this idea of like, let's stay small, let's not be seen so that we don't get in trouble, let's not take up too much space so that we don't, have things happen to us that, that we could have prevented because we're just trying to survive in whatever way. So those are some of the factors that could play a role in why it's so difficult for adults with immigrant parents to take up space. We'll talk more about, how to take up space in another episode. Other factors are, just really preferences and emotions and personalities. Those things, those individualistic characteristics could also play a role in why it could be difficult for you to take up space. So the question I want to leave you with today is, what am I fearful of when I do take up space, when I share what I want, what I need, what I'm thinking, an idea, right? It could be in relationships, it could be with family members, it could be at work, it could be at school, like just raising your hand. It could be with a friend who like really annoyed you and you're like, I don't want to say anything, things like that. What is stopping you? What is the thought, the worry, the fear that's coming up in sharing actually what you need to be taken care of? What do you need to be taken care of emotionally, physically, practically, right? Think about that. Like, what is stopping you from getting the care that you want, the space that you need from someone else for you? That's the question for you. So we'll talk more in the next episodes about how to take up space. And I can't wait to hear what you think about the episode. Share this with a friend who may be struggling to take up space and hadn't really thought about these factors, or you just want to share this with them so that they feel seen and heard. That would be the greatest way to support them in helping them feel seen. So I'll talk to you next time, and take care. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. I appreciate you being here. Just as a reminder, all information on this is intended to be informational and educational only. Although I am a licensed therapist, I am not your therapist. If you are looking for any medical or mental health services, please reach out to providers local to your area and seek out information that is specific for you. This information is not intended to replace any medical or mental health services that you may benefit from. And I hope that you enjoyed the information that was provided on the show today, and I'll see you on the next episode.